So, you got a bird in your house?
Can you hear that?
What is that?
That's this is it's a daggone blue jay.
What? Are you serious? Dude, he
I
getting
can't.
it.
I'm gonna have to close the window. It's the
I was
it's
like,
the
my man's recording from the jungle today.
I know.
It's awesome.
Golly.
That's so
Holy
awesome.
cow.
All right, I'm gonna go in
Welcome.
here.
Welcome from home plate from the Toronto Blue Jays.
For real. For real. I hope we have some people jump on today since we were MIA last week.
Yeah, we might be.
Might be a little bit struggling, but it's all good. All right, hold on here. Let me find it. There we go. All right. I think last time I forgot to share.
Did you?
I think I forgot to share. So,
So nobody like, share, and subscribe.
right. But not today. Today we're hitting them all, Ken.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're touching them all.
The Nayland Basketball Academy.
Did you give it to them?
Why not, right?
Might as well.
Should I give it to him?
Basketball
Lee
Joe.
Nayland?
We'll just do it just because it's a basketball, Joe.
Right. I mean, yeah. Lee Nayland married to one of our high school friends.
Yep.
Shout out to, I think if I remember correctly, I saw the other day that he got inducted into the,
Mm-hmm.
was
it
it the
Purdue or Indiana? Yeah.
Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame or something like that? That's pretty awesome.
Congratulations. Congratulations, Lee Nayland.
I think anytime somebody gets inducted into a Hall of Fame, they deserve a shout out.
They do. Absolutely. Especially if it's a sports thing. Because this is actually we're secretly we're just secretly a sports podcast under the guise of
I'm sure we'll weave some sports commentary into today's
for real.
little dealio.
Yeah.
Dealio. You want to give us you got the chat there to give us a Ken Bastarkey, Chief Meteorologist weather report.
Chief Meteorologist Ken Bastarkey checking in today. It's currently sunny with 67 degrees and a high of 81 in Northeast Ohio. 70 degrees all week long with only a 40% chance of rain. This is the time of year that you live in Ohio.
Man, for real. Somebody was telling me yesterday that they're saying that our trees are going to go from green to brown. Did you hear that?
Yes.
I
did hear that.
I have a hot take. You ready for my hot take?
Okay.
This is not going to be a popular hot take.
Okay, it's all good.
I don't like fall.
Whoa. Wow. Man.
I said it. It's forever out
Golly.
there on the internet.
You're going to have people throwing pumpkin spice all over your windshield of your car.
Well, that's another reason to not like.
That's reason enough to not like fall.
That is reason
I saw
enough.
something the other day and it showed like this. It had like this wave and it was, I don't know, it was supposed to be, I don't know what it was supposed to be, but it was almost like it was like this fog and it says pumpkin spice is coming. It was a few weeks ago. And I thought to myself, it looks just like allergies are coming. Pumpkin spice is coming.
It looks like
that's going to make
allergies
me
are coming.
excited.
Right? For real, man. That's what I'm saying. So here's my thing. Here's my thing about winter. It's just the cruel reminder that winter's on the other side. Everything turns brown,
That's
leaves
the
fall
thing.
off, and it just I hate to be a downer today. I'm not trying to be a downer, Ken. I'm just being real. If like people say, well, I need all 4 seasons or whatever. Listen, give
Yeah.
me spring and summer. I'm good with spring and summer.
Well, you could have 4 seasons if you had like early spring, late spring, early summer, late summer. That's
I love it. I'm all for it. I am all for it. So yeah. So
bro. Right.
that's my unpopular opinion.
That you know what? Here's the deal. This is, ladies and gentlemen, Chris Dillingham would like to announce that fall is just that magical time of year when people pretend that they love chilly mornings and dead leaves, when really it's just an elaborate excuse to drink melted Yankee candle wax disguised as pumpkin spice.
There you go. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
The only redeeming factor is, man, Gus Brothers has some great apple cinnamon donuts. Now that'll Gus Brothers Pumpkin Farm, or it's not a pumpkin farm. It's I don't know what it is. It's a whole deal.
Pumpkin spice farm.
No pumpkin spice. They probably do, actually. They probably do.
You love it.
I do love it. But we're on this
Hummel
health
loves
journey.
fall.
I can't partake because we're on a health journey. Maybe just
True.
one. Would one hurt?
You know, I talked to somebody yesterday who said to me that this was a conversation I had.
Okay.
That getting your heart rate up to double the normal resting heart rate
Okay.
3 times a week
Yeah.
has a greater effect than having an extreme stringent diet. Your diet has less of an effect than your activity. And so you'd be better off having more physical activity and less and more of a moderate diet. More physical activity, more moderate diet, rather than to be like extreme on your diet but not have a whole lot of that it would actually be better for your. And I think Andrew Huberman would agree with that.
There you go. Huberman Labs.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
My friend Andrew. I call him
Yes.
Andy, but
That's only reserved for a few select group of people, right?
yeah. When I text him, I say, "Hey Andy, sup?"
Yeah. And how does he respond?
He responds back saying, "Bro, I know you hate pumpkin spice. Don't come at me like that." He's
awesome.
a funny guy.
He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right. You ready to rock and roll today?
Yeah.
We're back. We're back.
I
We're
noticed
so
somebody
back.
joined us. I noticed somebody joined us on YouTube who's Mars X, and I'm thinking like I'm wondering if that's.
Ooh,
At
is
first,
that
I thought
from-
it was Groucho Mars X, but then I wondered if that's like, like Elon Musk
Is it
occupy
Elon?
Mars and he owns X.
Welcome, Elon.
Actually, it might be Elon Musk. I heard that he was going to jump on and check our podcast out soon. So who
I wouldn't
knows?
be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
He's heard about us.
No doubt. Probably from Andy Huberman.
Well, you know what? I don't know if he and Andy are that good of friends. It could be Don.
It could be done. It could. Don Trump. Donnie. Marzek says Adrian. So I'm not sure if Marzek's. I'm not sure. If
Yo.
Hold on. I'm not sure if Marzek's is from Adrian, Michigan, is named Adrian, or is referencing Rocky. It could be all 3 of those.
Yes.
So welcome, Adrian Marzix.
I like, you know what, our YouTube listeners have very cool and interesting.
Yeah, we've had some great interactions.
Yeah,
we've had some knuckleheads, but we've had some good engagements and interactions.
Speaking of engagement, bro,
I thought you were going to say speaking of knuckleheads.
Huh?
I thought you were going to say speaking of knuckleheads.
Yeah. Speaking of knuckleheads,
It is going to be a good one. You ready to go?
let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Sorry, you threw me.
You thought to yourself, I hope he's on mute.
I saw you going for it. I saw you going for it. I was like, oh no. All right, sorry about that. Sorry. I lost it last minute.
Yeah.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham alongside my big brother, Ken Dillingham, Jr. the Third, on this beautiful Tuesday. We're back, Ken. Had a little hiatus, as we like to say. We were at General Conference last week in St. Louis, Missouri. What's your report from General Conference?
General Conference was invigorating, faith building, awe inspiring. The messages were down to earth, practical. They were anointed. The fellowship, because I got to spend most of the time with you and your wife and my wife, it was the fellowship was unbeatable. Overall, I would say the United Pentecostal Church is on a great trajectory.
Man, so good. I'm going to tell you right now, Jerry Jones.
Jerry
Bro.
Pause Jones.
Jerry stinking Jones. What a preaching machine, dude. I mean,
Not a
absolutely
wasted
awesome.
word.
If you get a chance, if anybody gets a chance, go and watch his message, Lost Letters. Bro, that's absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable message. The way he preached it, like it literally was like stepping back into the 90s, and just he absolutely rocked the house. Tremendous message. So I agree, just a great time. Enjoyed getting to see everybody. And one of the cool things, Ken, one of my takeaways from General Conference was, man, there's some language stuff that's happening with regard to the mission and discipleship and all those things. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff happening.
Very much so. Yeah, you hear things like in the message on Tuesday night when our friend J. Todd Nichols, Jerry Jones was amazing. J. Todd Nichols was amazing. Wait a minute. J. Todd Nichols, Jerry Jones, and Josh Carson. There's a conspiracy.
Oh, man. Clearly a conspiracy going on.
David Bernard would not have been allowed to preach except the fact that he's general superintendent. You know? So, yeah, I mean, but, Todd Nichols is preaching about the uprooting of the tree of knowledge. Oh my goodness. And the uprooting of the tree so that we can have true faith and we can be led by the Spirit. And man, you're not going to get smart enough to have revival. You're not going to get smart enough to have it's amazing. Absolutely. Looks like, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like Chris Dillingham is stuck on mute. Wonder what the deal is here. Can I unmute him?
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
All right. Wow. So sorry about that. A little technical glitch here.
First time ever, folks. First time ever.
Little techie glitch. Have a little problem with some equipment here. So hopefully we got that all squared away. Man, absolutely so true. David Bernard's going to preach. I mean, whether his name is J. David Bernard or whatever, he's going to preach. Did a good job. Everything was so good, so awesome. And love all that kind of stuff that's happening. Excited. We also had a great luncheon with our Mobilized Church Network pastors, and that was cool. That was awesome. So a good time. Real quick before we get into our real topic of conversation.
Yes, our real topic.
We would be remiss
Yes.
if we didn't at least address the Ryder Cup.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Got any observations for us, Ken, from the Ryder Cup?
Um, the United States needs to start their junior players playing team events at a younger age.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I
You
like
could
that.
tell the United States, if you didn't know, if you didn't know what happened on Friday and Saturday, and you just watched on Sunday, and somebody said, you know, you don't get to look at the score, you don't look at the points, whatever. You look Sunday and you're like, oh, dude, U.S. blew them away. I mean,
100%.
they only won what one? That Europe won one match. Everything else was a tie.
Tied.
U.S. won 5 or 6 out of 11. And what was interesting was that if who was it? Was it Morikawa that lost to Terrell Hatton on the last hole?
Yeah.
If
Did he lose or did he have it?
I can't remember. Somebody lost on the last hole, and if they would have won that hole, it would have meant that that Europe would have only it would have halved. No, I mean would have only retained, and
So they
which would have
tied.
is
Morikawa and Hatton tied.
who was
So
somebody lost it on the last hole. Was it Sam
uh
Burns?
let's see here. Burns, they tied.
Okay,
So the only loss was Oberg. Cantlake lost to Oberg.
okay,
Everything
okay.
else was a
Oh, I know
tie.
what it was. I know what it was. Whoever was the last player coming in was up one and
Yes,
lost
and
the last hole, and yeah. So, but my point is,
Henley was the worst one. That was
yeah,
the one because he
I know,
had it,
I
put it
know.
within 10 feet, and comes up short on an easy putt and lost that hole because of it, which would have made it really interesting. Because that if he wins that one, now all of a sudden it would have been they would have been right at 14, and then
Yeah,
like that puts a pressure on the guys coming in behind him. That kind of took
yeah,
all the pressure off. You just need a half a point and whatever.
yeah.
So
Well, and the thing is too, I think it's interesting because it's 14 to retain, but with Hovland not playing, I mean, they were talking on, the commentators were talking about, man, we really got to win one because we don't want to walk away, especially with Hovland not playing, for them to be able to say, well, you got to split a match. If we had done that, the U.S. would have had another match to potentially win, and they could have actually turned it around and swept it on Sunday.
right.
So
Absolutely. So yeah, it was. I agree with you. Clearly, the difference is I think 18 holes. U.S. players were clearly the better golfers, but
absolutely,
they didn't have clutch guys, and so when you need a big clutch shot with the team play and whatever, kind of a long haul, hole to hole, Europe just beat the snot out of them, just beat
it's
the
true.
daylights out of them. So
It's very true.
anyway, got to wait another couple of years to try to go to Ireland. I think maybe we should have a Mobilized Church trip to Ireland
Why not?
for Ryder Cup 27.
I think.
Feels missional.
Oh, bro. I think that's what we could do is we could go and do some. We could go do some street evangelism.
Hey, there you go. We've done it before. Northern
Carry our
Ireland.
John 3:16. Wear John 3:16 shirts.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it.
We could
All right.
we could put on the shirt. Jesus loves the United States more than Europe. Stuff like that.
Make America holy again.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. We're ready to rock and roll today. So we're amped up because we got 2 weeks of stuff like just ready to flow out of us today. So I feel like it's going to be a really good conversation. Before we do that, I appreciate our new friend Mars X said that they liked and shared it already. So I appreciate that. If you could do that, get the word out, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
And we certainly would love to connect with you. We want your engagement in this conversation today. So I'm going to let you today, Ken. This is coming from your study and whatever. So I'm going to let you set today's topic up, which I think is a really good conversation. And, we've tried to, on these episodes, provide a variety of resources, information, conversation topics, all related to discipleship and disciple making, but
Right.
not be always super technical about, how to create a discipleship culture, although that's a big part of it. Sometimes it's practical living, sometimes it's practical application in a church setting. So why don't you get us kicked off today? This is
Okay.
going to be more in the vein of discipleship living,
Yeah.
more
Being
than
the disciple, more than
being,
making
more than
disciples.
making. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've been doing so last year. I did my Bible reading through the scriptures, and I enjoy that. I enjoy reading. I enjoy reading through the scriptures. The thing that I probably don't enjoy about it as much is the fact that when I stop to really dig in like I want to, I see something that just jumps out at me. It gets me behind. And so this year I decided, you know what? I'm gonna start in the book of Acts, and literally spent the first 6 months of 2025 in the book of Acts. Like I
Love
would
that.
I read 3 verses a day, 5 verses a day, whatever, and make notes and so on. So now I left Acts and went into Romans, and I'm in Romans chapter 7 today. And this morning when reading, I started reading Romans chapter 7. And as I was reading it, I thought to myself, I'm like, good night. That is a hard to understand, um, passage or, group
Sure.
of, actually it was Romans 7, like 7 through 12. And I'll read it real quick here. I'm just going to read it in the New King James, but he
Yeah.
said, so Paul says, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? Certainly not. On the contrary, I would not have known sin except through the law, for I would not have known covetousness unless the law had said, you shall not covet. But sin, so now here's the key. 8 and 9 is what we're going to key in on today. But sin, taking opportunity by the commandment, produced in me all manner of evil desire. For apart from the law, sin was dead. I was alive once without the law, but when the commandment came, sin revived and I died. So I read that part, Chris, and I'm like, what? have
Right.
you ever
Right.
have you ever read it? But sin taking opportunity, and so I thought, okay, I'm not getting something here but sin taking opportunity by the commandment. Sin took an opportunity by the commandment. In other words, sin seized the commandment to use, somehow seized an opportunity through or by the commandment to produce in him all manner of evil desire.
Yeah.
What?
Right.
And then he says, for apart from the law, sin was dead. So I told Stephanie this morning, I said, certainly he can't be talking about that without the law, there's no such thing as sin because people died in the flood because of their evilness and so on. So we know that can't be true. And so then he said, I was alive once without the law, but when the commandment came, sin revived and I died. I'm like, what in the world? And the commandment, which was to bring life, I found to bring death. For sin taking occasion by the commandment deceived me, and by it killed me. Therefore, the law is holy, and the commandment holy and just and good. So, man, I thought I got to dig in on this. So let me just start by saying that what Paul's talking about here is that he uses an interesting word. He uses the Greek word aphorme, aphorme, aphorme,
Okay.
which carries the sense of a starting point or a bridgehead or a base of operations, which is a military term for a launching pad into enemy territory. And I think that's probably the best way to look at it. It's a base of operations. So what he's saying is sin seizes the good and holy law as its staging ground, turning what was meant for life into a platform for rebellion. Wow. So the problem, so what Paul's saying here is the problem is not the commandment itself, but what he's talking about is sort of the perverted or perverse response of the sinful heart. And I think that's important. Finally, when I arrived at that, like what Paul's really saying is because he's saying the sin is holy, or excuse me, the law is holy. It's just that I'm sinful. And so,
Right.
so what he's kind of talking about here is this idea that says, when he says the law seized the commandment for an opportunity to produce evil in me, what he's saying was that 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 sin actually took that which was holy, the law, as a staging ground, turning what was meant for life into a platform to wage war against us because of our weakness and the evilness of our sinful heart.
That's interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Turned it into a staging ground.
Yeah. So, so when we think about that, so you might say, well, in what way? And we'll talk about these three in a little bit more detail. But the first one is pride.
Yeah.
So I started reading. I read a couple of commentators. I read some, classic takes on it from everywhere from John Calvin to John Wesley to Martin Lloyd Jones and even modern theologians, and it seemed that there were probably three primary understandings of what Paul was talking about. The first was that pride, sin used our own carnal pride to create an atmosphere where the law, which was to convict us of our unrighteousness, literally sin said, I'm going to try to use this to pull out the pride in them so that they could create an atmosphere of self-justification. The second one was hypocrisy, so that there could be image posturing. And the third one is rebellion, or inciting the carnal nature. So let's just launch off into the pride one, which is self-justification, because I think that's important. So the law, which was intended to humble us, is twisted into a platform of boasting.
Just crazy. When isn't that amazing? I mean, I think that's such a great illustration, because we know it to be so true.
Yeah.
That what was designed to remind us of our need for God, make us aware, right? Like it's the revealer of the places in us that no matter how good we think we are, we know that there's places in us that are not measuring up to that. And so it's designed to be a reminder. And yet, human nature takes over, and within short order, all of a sudden now it's used as the opportunity for somebody to claim superiority, or to use it as a mechanism of control, and all of that kind of stuff, which is all rooted in pride. So it's really amazing. I think that this one in particular is really kind of the great revealer of the human condition and the human heart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Because it should produce humility in us. When you look at something, I may think I'm a really good basketball player. And we were telling stories the other day, and I fancied myself to be a pretty good basketball player. I thought I was pretty good. And when I was in college, we went to Indiana University to their whatever open gym thing, and so we were there, and so we were playing. We had some guys. We were hanging with guys that played on like the practice team with some of the guys and that played for IU, whatever. And then in walked Calbert Chaney. Do you remember Calbert Chaney?
Yeah. Yeah.
Calbert Chaney walks in with another guy that was on the team who was just a scrub. He wasn't like a star on the team or whatever. And bro, you talk about humiliating.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden you realize, okay, there's a whole different level, right? Like that's what the law should have done to people, is like, oh, I may be pretty good, I may do all right. But then when you're confronted with that reality, like, no, I'm really not at that level. And yet, like often happens, we find ways to try to elevate ourselves or to make us feel better about ourselves, maybe pointing at other people that are doing things that we identify as worse than or whatever. I really think pride of all things is the human response most of the time, stuff like that. So it's really
Hmm.
interesting.
Well, and I think what you're talking about hits, I mean, directly to the point because the law was intended to humble us. It was the law. I mean, you're talking about humbling. It was a
Right.
humbling, and you only think you're good in comparison to who you've played with before, and when all of a sudden you're introduced to what really is good.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about performance good here, but in a moral sense, the law introduced us to the goodness of God.
Right.
And so that's why the Bible said don't judge yourself among yourselves, because why? Because there is no judging, there's no good standard worthy of us judging ourselves by in and among ourselves. In fact,
Right.
if we judge ourselves among ourselves, what we'll probably do is find a standard less than us
Yeah.
so that our good, so we're going to exploit or make up more obvious what's good about us. And so, I mean, look at, and so you think about Paul being a Pharisee before, he was saved, excuse me. And look at some of the things that we see in scripture. Luke chapter 18, the Pharisee boasted, God, I thank you that I'm not like other men.
Yeah. Right.
You know, uh, I,
Which here's the deal. Nobody, like, no real human would like maybe say
right.
that out loud,
Yeah,
but we do say that out
I
loud,
know.
which is
I know.
crazy to think about.
Well, and the thing is, like Philippians 3:6, Paul said, you know, uh, he was talking about all of his qualifications before he came to Christ. He says, you know, at one point he considered himself blameless
Yeah.
in his law keeping.
Yeah.
Well, so Paul's kind of writing here in Romans 7. It's interesting if you sort of juxtapose what he said in Philippians 3 and 6 with what he's saying here in Romans 7. It's like he's saying, I hadn't known sin until the law came, and then the law said don't covet, and whatever. And it's interesting because in Philippians 3 and 6 he said, but before I considered myself blameless inside the context of the Pharisaical rule. So, Romans 10 and 3, being ignorant of God's righteousness and seeking to establish their own righteousness, they did not submit to the righteousness of God. That's what he says
Yeah.
in Romans 10.
Yeah.
So here what we find is that what Paul is, I think what he's really saying is, how did sin, which is, he's speaking of sin here as sort of an entity. It's
Sure.
almost like sin is like it's the thing that's waging war. And he's how did it do that? Well, sin exploited our pride.
Yeah.
And the concept of I am holy became the mask that sin wore while the heart stayed corrupted. And so instead of producing repentance, it created an opportunity for people to live out the law better than someone else,
Yeah.
thus claiming their righteousness.
Yeah.
Look how righteous I am. Which, so when the law was intended to bring us humbled, like you said, watching those high level D1 players, when the law was supposed to bring us to a place where we looked at ourselves and we said, my God, I mean, compared to God, compared to his righteousness, his holiness, his expectation, his standard, this is what God is, and this is what God likes, and this is what God wants, and this is what I am, which
Yeah.
should have been humiliating to us. Sin steps in, uses and exploits our pride so that the Pharisees could stand forth, or anybody, any religious person steps forward and feels self justified. It's unbelievable to
It
imagine.
really is. It really is. And here's the thing, that that nature, so we live under grace. We're not under the law now. We live under grace, but the human nature hasn't changed.
Yeah,
We can do the same thing
absolutely.
with you know our righteousness. We can do the same thing with the grace that God has given to us,
Yeah.
and we can start feeling like because we avoid certain things or don't do certain things that, we're better or whatever. So what should be the mindset of a disciple of Jesus is Jesus is the only standard,
Right.
right? Your kind of revelation about the is ought gap, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that is such a humbling thing, because at the end of the day, Jesus is the only standard that matters.
That's right.
And if you're not measuring up in all areas, then you're short of his glory. All of us have sinned, come short. So if you're not measuring up to this full standard of Jesus, then you're short of that. And so the is ought gap, the reality is you have the ought, which is Jesus. He's the ought.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us are somewhere down the line of where
Yeah.
we are that comes short of the ought. That revelation is so powerful, because then it gives you the ability to look at somebody. I may be a little bit farther along than somebody on my journey to becoming more like Jesus. There's nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with that. I'm on my journey. But I
Sure.
also know that without the grace and mercy of God, I'm no different than somebody else who I think is way far back on the line. And it gives us the ability to be able to, to look at somebody and look at them about, what direction are you headed, really is what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Repentance, about face, turning the other direction. If somebody's moving towards Jesus, they may have stuff going on in their life that I would look at and be like, oh, I can't believe you got that, whatever. But if they're moving towards Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
they're moving to becoming more like him, which is what all of us should be doing. And we've got to be careful, I think, Ken, in our world, to being able to be like Jesus. And that is staying true to the value system of the kingdom without using it without allowing what you're talking about there, for it to get a place in us that makes us feel like, because of that we're better than somebody else.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, absolutely. Which, I mean, really leads into probably the second primary way that the Apostle Paul's referring here to how does sin use the law as an opportunity to deceive us? How does sin? The second way is the law provided external standards, external ways of living, like Sabbath keeping,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think this is so powerful, because Jesus said, "Was the Sabbath made for man, or was man made for the Sabbath?" If you believe that man was made for the Sabbath, then Sabbath becomes a way by which somebody can demonstrate how holy they are. But if you think that the Sabbath was made for man, then it's a time of restoration and rest and whatever. And so what Jesus is showing is, I think Jesus is actually doing this very thing that Paul is demonstrating here in Romans 7, in this
Yeah.
really theologically complex passage. He's saying the law provides means and mechanisms of carrying out expectations. It's not just internalized things. It's
Sure.
it's
Sure.
it's keeping
Yeah.
the Sabbath, and you don't do this and you don't do that, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And so but then what happens is those very things can be displayed for approval or demonstration, right? The outward conformity. I think this is a big deal for Jesus. He told the Pharisees, he said, "You are like whitewashed tombs.
Yeah.
Outwardly you appear righteous to men, but on the inside you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness." What he was saying was that what were they doing? They were taking the law, and how did sin use the law as an opportunity to deceive and draw in this kind of way? It's image posturing. It's the
Mm-hmm.
hypocrisy of image posturing. So outward conformity was hiding in their lives inward corruption. And Jesus is very clear, because Jesus is saying, Jesus is not saying that. He tells his disciples, he says, "Do the things that they tell you to do."
Sure.
Right? Jesus wasn't saying, "Oh, that stuff doesn't matter." Jesus wasn't
Right.
saying all that outward conformity stuff doesn't matter. It's all really about your heart. He didn't say that. He said,
Right.
he said, "Do the things that they tell you to do. Just don't be like them, who say them or profess them with their mouth, but they won't lift their finger to do them. They'll
Sure.
swallow a camel, but they'll strain at a gnat. And I think what Jesus is saying is sort of, he's communicating this idea that in Isaiah 29, that people draw near with their mouths, but they've removed their heart far from me. And so, and so, and so what happens is if you're not careful, I think this is what Paul's saying here in Romans 7, is that sin lurks beneath the surface while appearances suggest that you've got it all together. And so how does sin use the law as an opportunity to deceive us? And I think this second one, this image posturing in hypocrisy, is huge.
It really is. It is so huge. And I want to, if you're cool with it, kind of drill in a little bit from a practical standpoint.
Sure.
And this is why the be the disciple piece is such a critical piece. And this is why we say the definition of a disciple of Jesus is a person that's willing to let Jesus change what they care about to match and reflect what he cares about. Because at the end of the day, all of the issues flow from the heart, right? All the issues of life flow from the heart. And you can, right. Clearly what he's saying is you can camouflage the exterior, but it doesn't change what's happening internally.
Mhm.
And so then the challenge becomes, okay, well, what if I know the truth, right? Cognitive dissonance. What if I know the truth, but I don't feel it. I don't, whatever. Does that make me a hypocrite if I'm doing it because I know it's the truth? I'm doing it on the outside, but I don't really feel it in my heart. And my answer to that would be, certainly there's a level of obedience that is required and that's important. But what I will say, Ken, is if you don't deal with that cognitive dissonance,
Mhm.
what it'll produce in you is hypocrisy.
That's right.
Because you don't really love the things that Jesus loves. It's a battle between wills. This is where sin is lurking, because it's a battle between wills, and I want to do what I want to do, which is why you don't feel it. And then so what is the remedy to that? The remedy to that is what we say. You've got to allow Jesus to come in and transform your heart first, so that what is produced naturally, the fruit that is naturally produced, is reflection of kingdom values.
Right.
And so if you're doing it simply from a knowledge standpoint, again, there's some value to obedience, but if you don't deal ultimately with the heart issue, it at some point will produce hypocrisy in you.
Mhm.
It'll probably produce some level of resentment. It may
Mhm.
produce self-righteousness, right? Which is what happened to them. So I think, like, just from a real practical standpoint, like, we need to understand you're not always going to just be in perfect alignment with these things. And the answer and the solution is don't just do it.
Yeah.
The
Well,
answer
that
is you
in
got to
fact,
deal with the heart
you're
issue.
you jumped all the way to the conclusion because there's a statement in the conclusion that says, therefore, we cannot excuse sin by saying, I'll stop once God removes it from me.
Right.
That's the hope of grace and truth. Let me hit
Right.
this one here about the danger of the third piece, which is the rebellion, because I think you're talking exactly this danger of self-deception, and it gets down to where our hope is. But
Yeah.
I think the other thing, the one thing that is important, I think, really to highlight this last little piece of rebellion, and that is, and I think this is really interesting, but that is that and this is really wild, but and it demonstrates what you're saying, Chris. I think this right here is,
Mm-hmm.
man, this is the launch pad of exactly what you're saying. So I'm going to throw it back at you to just really drill into that, what you're talking about. But I think we've got to understand that sometimes, and I think Paul was really, this might be maybe even the closer to the, I mean, if you're getting closer and closer to the bullseye, I think
Yeah.
this might be closest to what Paul's saying. And that is that prohibition sometimes actually provokes desire. Because he said, you shall not covet, awakens coveting. He
Mm.
said, I had not known
Yes. Yeah.
coveting except,
Right.
but and so here's the
Right.
deal. And this is because I want to set this up, because what you're saying is, man, this is where you're talking is exactly where we need to arrive at. And I think this is the danger point. And that
Yeah.
is that I think that what Paul's saying here in Romans 7 is the law fuels an innate rebellion in our flesh. In other words,
Mm,
because
mm,
we've got a carnal nature and we've got the sin nature, there's a natural resistance against whatever says no.
for sure.
And so you shall not covet, which is the law, can actually produce a rebellious resistance or even incite a stronger desire to covet. That's what Paul's
Interesting.
saying.
Interesting.
So what's powerful is that dynamic actually parallels what sometimes we hear about in psychology, that is observed. Focusing on the forbidden often stirs desire.
Sure.
In other words, if you only tell somebody, don't do that, right? Like, don't spill your drink, or
Yeah.
don't make a mess, or don't, it focus, it almost paralyzes people in focusing on the don't do that, to the point that, like Paul says it like this: they that do mind the flesh
Yeah.
become obedient to the flesh.
Yeah.
What you pay attention to, what you focus on. And so
So true, man.
so in psychology they say, if you focus somebody so much on what they shouldn't do and what they shouldn't be, Paul's saying sin actually seizes that opportunity to exploit our inborn fleshly carnality and carnal nature. And our fallen nature is drawn to what's off limits simply because it's forbidden.
Bro. And I mean, just think about it. Like, you say, I'm going to go on a fast. You got stuff been sitting in that pantry for doggone 8 months,
Yeah,
and you've never touched it,
I
whatever.
know.
And you start fasting for a couple of days, and you go in there, you're like, oh man, I really have a craving for that. No, you don't. You're just,
Yeah,
you're seeing it. And it's like, as you're talking there, I was thinking about, we use the phrase often, particularly regarding like burden. We use the phrase exposure breeds appetite.
yes,
So what I'm hearing you say is like, that's it. It's not always the positive perspective,
yeah.
right? We know that there's the negative side. Is kind of a neutral thing, whatever the situation is. So exposure to this kind of creates our natural innate
That's what Paul said.
desire and appetite, right?
Paul said, before the law, I was alive,
Yeah.
but when the law came, sin revived
Yeah.
and I died. And so let me jump all the way down here. Okay. So the final verdict is this, and let's
Yeah.
get to the ultimate hope,
Let's get to it.
because here's the deal. Sin is so perverse that it corrupts even holy things. And
Yeah.
we gotta arrive at that place. So Paul says the law is not sin, but
Yeah.
sin uses the law to reveal our helplessness. So the final verdict is the end result is a realization of our desperate need for deliverance through Jesus Christ by the indwelling power of his Spirit. And so what you said, and I'll just go ahead and set it up. Here's the conclusion. So the conclusion is that the law, if the righteous law that is a revealer of God's holy expectation and his holy nature and the environment of heaven and everything that encompasses what
Yeah.
is God and godly.
Yeah.
If the law is a demonstrator of that, it's a schoolmaster to lead us to Christ. If it's a demonstrator, it's showing us the purity and righteousness and holiness of God. And yet Paul says that very law became the launching pad for a military coup
Mm-hmm.
in our soul because of evil that dwells in us. The
Yeah.
evil desire of our pride, our propensity to self-justification, our propensity to hypocrisy, our propensity to rebellion and the carnal nature, that when God says don't, for whatever reason, God, Chris, I mean, imagine how long we could have spent on that one piece right there. When you tell a little kid, don't touch that.
Right.
Have you who in our audience has ever seen one of those videos where they come in and they sit a cookie in front of these kids and they sit them there and say, "Okay, I'm going to be right back. Do not touch the
Right,
cookie.
right,
Don't eat the
exactly.
cookie. When I
Right.
get back, I'm going to let you eat the cookie. Do not eat the cookie." And they sit there and they look around and then they giggle and then somebody looks at the cookie and then they reach out for the cookie and they hold the cookie up and it's done. It's over.
Right,
It's the
right,
tree. It's the
right.
it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so I think what Paul is saying is that is 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 sin as an entity, and it's around us, but it's also an entity in us,
Yeah,
uses the law as a launching pad to twist and deceive and use it. Oh my
interesting.
goodness. And so here's the deal. This is the danger of self-deception, right?
Yeah,
Paul said, I was alive once without the law. He had a
yeah,
sense of safety or self-sufficiency, but the commandment pierced the heart. So here's the deal. Paul's saying the commandment's good. We need the commandment.
yeah,
And like you said, we've got to we have a responsibility to live it out. We can't just simply say, like I mentioned earlier, well, I'll stop lying once God removes this from me.
yeah,
Somebody's like, I've got this propensity. I just got this inclination. I can't help myself. I just, I lie and it's just who I am and I'm not going to be a hypocrite. And so, but when God takes this away from me, no, we have to, as humans, as followers of Christ, we have to push toward, like you said, the is ought.
yeah.
We have to be turned toward, facing and moving toward, embracing and moving, reaching out for the ought. But the Bible says grace and truth, John 1:17, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So that's our hope. The law is the convicting part. The law is the thing that gives us that informs us to the expectation. But my favorite poem, Chris, it's a little poem, and you've heard me quote it before. Do this and live, the law commands, but gives me neither feet nor hands. A greater way grace doth bring, it bids me fly, but gives me wings. And so grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. So I think we're, you're at a point where you say, well, do you just simply say, well, you know what, until God changes me, this is just who I am?
Yeah.
Or do you pursue it? And in your pursuit, the Holy Spirit comes to transform, and that's where the magic happens.
Man, that's so true. It's so true. And I think through this, as you're talking there, I was like, okay, well, why would God give the law
Yeah.
if everything was fine before that? Well, the reality was not everything was fine before that. You were in
Exactly.
defiance of
Yes.
God's holy nature. You just weren't aware of it.
That's exactly right.
So then God allows you to become aware of that. But the law, what Paul, in conjunction with his other teachings, the law was inadequate to fulfill. Your poem you just quoted there, it couldn't
Mm-hmm.
it couldn't deliver us from that. And so this is why I think the takeaway today has to be this:
Yeah.
is the unregenerated person may not be under like the law, but you're still in violation of the holiness and righteousness of God, the
Yeah.
holy nature of God. We're
Right.
still in violation of those things. And so God allows us to become aware of the places where we're violating it so that we can get in right relationship, justification, being justified. So we can be justified in him, come into right relationship. But we also have to be aware, Ken, that we can be exactly like those that were under the law
There it
and
is.
utilize these things in the same way, because pride still
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
still a driving force in human nature.
Even though Jesus
Hypocrisy,
eliminated the law,
even though he
right?
eliminated it.
Jesus,
Right,
Jesus moved, the Bible
exactly.
said he moved away the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, nailing them to the cross. The handwriting of ordinances was the law of Moses. He removed that and nailed it to the cross. but yet the law continues to be a reflection of God's holy nature and his expectation. It's just that we're not under the framework of the law.
Which is why we say, like, this is a lifetime journey, and why we've had conversations and discussions about, like, it's not just a little class that you take or whatever. It has to be the lifetime journey, because if left alone,
Yeah.
what will happen is your human nature will stir up again, right? It will come back, and most likely it's going to come back in one of these areas that you just mentioned.
Bro, can I tell you something crazy?
Tell me.
This is nuts. Okay. So have you ever seen any of these drinks or whatever, these health drinks, and they have what's called reishi mushroom?
I don't think so.
It's like there's these different, like it's called lion's mane and reishi
Okay.
mushroom and
Oh,
all
yeah. Oh,
these
yeah.
different.
Yeah. 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 I
You know what I'm
got
talking
you.
about?
Yeah.
Okay. So yesterday, um, so check this out. Yesterday, Stephanie sent me, okay. So she said to me, she said, "Hey, look at this," and she showed me this. It was this mushroom that was growing, right?
Yeah.
And she said, I'm sending it to you right now. And she said,
Okay.
folks, we're doing this. Like, we're so trained, we can send each other texts right in the middle of our podcast. And
100%.
so she said, what is this? And so I walked up and I'm kicking these things over, and they're stout.
Wow.
Isn't that weird looking? Is there any
It
way you
looks
can
like
put
it.
it? Can you put something like that in the chat?
I don't
Is
know
it
if I
even
can do it
possible?
live. I don't know I can do it live.
Okay.
I might be able to do it
Okay.
afterwards on Facebook. I don't think I can do
Okay.
it in YouTube.
I would love for people to be able to see this, but so anyway, um, so here's what we've got. We've got this. It's this. We'll show it to you, but it's this red, round, huge. Like, it's really weird. You can tell it's a fungus, and apparently, bro, apparently these things are really like the one that I showed you. Those sell
Hmm.
between $20 and $40 a piece.
Holy cow!
They have like
It looks like
anti-inflammation
it
properties and
looks like a Thanksgiving. It looks like the picture of a Thanksgiving turkey that's been shriveled up.
That's so true. So it's so crazy. It doesn't look like anything you'd ever want to eat. But
No.
here's what's so crazy about that. So those of you that are listening, go search up. It's reishi. Go look up a reishi mushroom. So anyway, um, so she searches it in Google, and it says right there, it says this is a reishi mushroom, blah blah blah. And then it makes this statement. It says they grow on dead or decaying wood.
Okay.
Whoa, what? Dead or decaying wood? No. It's growing 5 feet from our pool. And then she said, wait a minute. She said, there was a tree right there. That's where the tornado came through and knocked that tree down.
Oh my.
There was a tree that's been gone for 6 years,
Yeah.
5 or 6 years, right? And these mushrooms are growing, and they only grow. They do not grow in the middle of grass. They don't
Hmm.
grow they only grow on decaying hardwood.
That's so weird.
You might look at that. You may look across there and say, well, there's no hardwood there. But underneath the surface, there's still the remains of the stump and the root system
Hmm.
that reishi mushroom was growing out of and off of. And it might have been gone for a long time. Those trees, Chris, haven't been there for 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
But what's so crazy about it is that it is evidence. It's not evidence like, oh wow, how weird is this? For the first time in the history of man, a reishi mushroom is just growing on the top of the
Yeah.
grass.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Right.
It's growing out of a stump that you've forgotten about. It's growing out of a
My.
root system that has been gone for a long time. And and we've got to be so aware of these kinds of things that just reminded me. I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning uh, thinking about this and praying about it, and it was just it had captured my thinking, bro. And I'm like, there was a tree there at one time,
Yeah.
and even though that tree was cut down, and it was cut down enough that it's totally below this, there's nothing that you could tell at all that there was ever a tree there anymore.
Right.
There's dirt and there's grass, and but underneath, just underneath that surface, there's the remains of that tree, and that fungus is growing off of the old remains.
My
And if
goodness.
we're not careful, you'll say, where did that come from? If
Yeah.
we're not careful, the old self-righteousness, that old pride of self-justification, that old hypocrisy of image posturing, that old rebellious, God says you can't do that, you can't go there, or the spirit checks you, or whatever. And if we're not careful, I think the Bible is very clear. There's something still in us that won't be delivered from us until we're delivered from these bodies. And to
So
me,
true, man. This
that's
is this is why human nature, like we can justify anything that we do or what, because we're familiar with us. We're familiar with, the things we've gone through and all of those different kinds of things. Like, you can try to be eating healthy and you've had a bad day and you're like, well, you know what, man, I deserve this whatever. This
yeah,
dessert, or I deserve whatever, because you can justify it very, very easily, right?
exactly.
But this is why the teachings of Jesus. I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little bit, uh, it might be hard to grasp for a second, but I think we should be judgmental, not
Right.
in the way that the world presents whatever, but the way Jesus presented it. And what he presented was through the image of the little splinter, the little piece, the little speck in somebody else's eye,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
the beam in our own eye.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why it's so critical, Ken, that what he was saying was, here's how you deal with that. You judge yourself the most harshly,
Right.
and you give the most grace to other people.
Yeah.
When you live that kind of attitude, that kind of mindset,
Mm-hmm.
where not in a like a self-destructive way, but just in a way that's constantly aware of, without Jesus, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
left to my own devices, I can justify anything. I can just, feel like that I can do whatever I want to do because I know me and know what's going on. But a real heart, a real discipleship heart, is so self-aware
Mm-hmm.
and is so understanding that I've got that root that's there. If I don't deal with it, if I don't die daily, then what was the mushroom?
Rishi.
Reishi, the
I know.
reishi
Rishi.
mushroom can all of a sudden pop up, and you're like, where did that come from?
Where did that come from?
But it's the fact that
There's no tree there. There's not even any tree there.
you've found a way to cover that place in your life that makes it look good, but there's still that deep root. You're self-aware,
You
bro.
know.
We know
You know.
if we're really honest, and that's the heart of what discipleship is really about, of being in that place that we're so fully aware of the potential beams that are in our own eye, so that we deal with it the biblical way. We deal with it through his word, we deal with it through his
Mm,
spirit, and
so
allow him
good.
to get victory over those things. So now it's not just covering that tree that's been cut down, it's not just covering it up, but it's literally uprooting it. Now all of a sudden you don't have to worry about the reishi mushroom, because you've got good soil underneath.
Mhm. Well, and you know what, Chris, and so here's the deal, and I think I think our outtake needs to be that as we said, grace and truth comes through Jesus Christ. And I think that although I believe, I believe we sing the song, I am covered by the blood. I believe that,
Yeah.
man. Thank God I'm
Yeah.
covered by the blood, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But here's the deal. Covered by the blood doesn't mean that I'm painted over by something that basically nothing has changed on the interior. I'm just
Yeah.
covered by the blood.
Yeah.
That song is not referring to the fact that, because we're covered by the blood, everything that's bad and messed up on the inside of us is, is
Bro.
sort of sealed in by like some kind of like sanctified Tupperware or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And I think the powerful thing that the outtake today as we wind this down, the landing gears down, and I think really what we need to be able to do is take a look at it and say, I think a lot of modern Christianity has, you said early on, if you don't deal with the dissonance, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
If you don't deal with the dissonance, your conscience will be disturbed.
Yeah.
If you don't deal with the dissonance, your conscience will be disturbed. How's that for an alliteration? And
I love it.
And
Mike Williams would be so proud.
I know. And so then why does some modern Christianity come to this place that they go, oh, well, that's works. Oh, well, that's works. You can't, we don't do that. That's works. We by grace are you saved, and that not of yours. But here's the deal. If people understood that grace and truth actually, so Paul's saying the law just becomes a disguise, or the law becomes a place that I can pose,
Yeah.
or the law becomes a thing that pulls out of me my innate desire to refuse and reject God's way.
Yeah.
God tells me to do this, and I say, well, your inward rebellion says, well, I'm going to do the opposite thing.
Sure.
And so you look at that and you say, wow, well, what's the answer? Well, the answer is not for those things to continue to be that way. That's why he said, I'm going to take out your stony heart, and I'm going to put a new spirit, and I'm going to put a new heart in you. God doesn't leave us. So this is the beautiful thing. God doesn't say, well, this is some modern theology basically says, well, we're all sinners.
Yeah.
We're all
right.
broke. We're all messed up. And so it's almost like this whole blood covering thing is like, we're really all terribly screwed up on the inside. It's just that we're kind of covered with this barrier of the blood, praise the Lord, so that God can't look at our deceptive self and our, whatever. And so we can lie to ourselves that we know we're not really what we should be, but we're covered in the blood. And by, man, thank God for grace. But here's the beautiful thing. Grace and truth actually pierce beneath the surface. This is why grace and truth is better than the law, because it pierces beneath the surface, showing that even apparent victories can hide deeper inner battles.
My.
Grace and truth actually goes below the surface and says, don't forget, there's still a stump and a root system in there that can grow the reishi mushroom.
The truth is still there. It's grace and truth. The truth is still there. The truth is still the revealer. The grace is not the excuse of it, but the empowerment to overcome that.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing, Chris, is it's the empowerment. Grace and truth strips away our self-confidence, and it exposes the futility of self-justification. Grace and truth come in, and the word and the spirit convicts us when we hide behind masks of righteousness. And so as we obey God's will, right? As we reject our will and we obey God's will, the spirit of Christ, who is the obeyer, the ultimate obedient one.
Yeah.
He was obedient unto death.
Yeah.
How obedient was Jesus? He was obedient unto death. And so as we demonstrate obedience, it triggers a harmony, it triggers an alignment with the spirit that is in us because it's the spirit of Christ. The spirit of Christ is dwelling in us. God, right? God, Christ in us, the hope of glory. And so when we are obedient, it triggers a harmony with the spirit that's in us, and it begins to transform our heart and our mind and moves us toward entire sanctification of the whole person, all the way from our outward actions to our inward desires. And so it's not like God says, well, I know that you're never really going to get it right because there's still that root of sin in you.
Yeah.
No, the Bible says that we do mortify by the Spirit. We do mortify the deeds of the flesh. What does that mean? As many as are led by the Spirit, they're the sons of God. So what that means is when we obey the Spirit, we put to death, or said another way, when we get to feeling good about ourselves, grace and truth comes along and starts to dig up some soil, and we go, wait, what are you doing? It took a long time for me to get that grass growing there. There was a tree there at one time. And grace and truth starts pulling that dirt and all out and says, I'm just reminding you that down underneath that, there's still a remnant of an old stump.
Yeah.
And so when we obey, it literally digs up those old places to give us the ability to continue to uproot and chop that old man out.
Man, that's so good, bro. That's so good. I think that's um Jared Young. We had a lot of great comments today, and I'll just mention this kind of wrapping up here. He made a comment. He said, when you begin to understand God and who he is, the fear of him is the beginning of wisdom. And wisdom, you can never fool God. And this is the beautiful heart of discipleship, right? Is that instead of self-justification, instead of trying to validate my own actions or whatever, instead we come with a heart of humility before God, knowing that he is the ultimate judge. He's the ultimate righteous one.
Right.
And the beautiful thing about it is, I preached about it on Sunday, right? We're commanded to come boldly to the throne of grace to do what? To obtain mercy and find grace to help in the time of need.
Mm-hmm.
We're called to come boldly into the throne of a holy, righteous God.
Right.
And so when you have that discipleship heart, that desire to be pleasing to him in every way, not in trying to justify my own behaviors or whatever, but really trying to allow the work of God to come in me, I can boldly approach his throne. And at his throne, I can get mercy and I can find grace, but you can't get there if you're constantly trying to validate and justify your own behaviors, your own actions. This is it all comes down, man, to the heart. It all comes down to the heartbeat.
Bro. Well, you know what? I years ago, I had an interaction with someone, and this is terrible, but I had an interaction with someone years ago, and I'm trying to think of how to say it in a kind way. But this individual was referencing a situation, and they said there was a situation, and it wasn't not the church that I pastor now, so it was prior to 23 years ago.
Yeah.
But a scenario where there was a young man who was a new convert who had gotten into the church and had fallen in love with a girl in the church, a young lady in the church. And the parents were very, very upset about it. And then they found out that they were sexually involved, and teenagers in the church and whatever. And they went to the pastor, and man, they were threatening, and they were like, we're gonna, He
Mm-hmm.
apparently he was like 19 and she was 17, and we're like, we're gonna take him to the police and we're gonna, whatever. And they were so vehement about it. And I understand. I understand, having a daughter, and whatever. But I mean, come on, bro. It takes two to tango. And, and finally the pastor said, I understand. And I understand why you're upset. And I was in on the meeting. I understand why you're upset. I understand. But then the pastor said, but here's my question. What's going to happen when it's your time to need grace and truth and mercy? And the parents spoke up and said, we've been in church for 30 something years. We don't need grace anymore.
Oh boy.
And bro, I'm not even going to tell you what 1 year from that day, it was the weirdest thing. I can't explain it. 1 year later, they weren't together. She was with another woman. Bro, it was the weirdest. And it was almost like when they said, I don't need grace. Something
Yeah.
triggered. And
Yeah.
I think, and that's the thing. What does grace do? Grace doesn't cover you.
Yeah.
Grace empowers you. It reveals where you're weak, and it empowers you to walk in God's glory. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. We all need the grace and mercy, and that, the ability to be like Jesus, to hold on to the value system of the kingdom,
yep.
but also love people where they're at, being able to stand on kingdom convictions,
Yes.
but then loving people where they're at, and awareness that I think this is the mindset it has to be. If it had not been for the grace and mercy of God.
Yeah, there it is.
And not only that, not only what he's done in the past, but Paul said, if I don't keep that mindset, I can preach to others and still become a castaway. I can still miss it.
There it is.
Because I still have the potential, the good that's within me. I desire to do the good, but I end up doing the thing that I don't want to do. And there's this constant battle. So great conversation.
And you
today.
still can grow the reishi mushroom.
You can still grow it. It's
That's
still,
the thing,
the potential is still there.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we had a lot of great comments. I wish I could have gotten to it, but we had just so much stuff to get to today. Thank you for, all the great interaction and engagement. I did have to block a dude on YouTube getting stupid, and we had one of those today. So, but it's all good, man. Most of them were all good and positive. So appreciate that. Appreciate the engagement, the interaction, and hopefully you were blessed by today's conversation. So check us out. We got all the social media stuff, all the website. We'd love, if you're a pastor, we'd love to connect with you. And you can check us out, thedillinghamgroup.org. We look forward to coming back to you next Tuesday around 10 o'clock. Until then,